Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast. We have a very US dollar heavy watch list this week, and that's because the US dollar is in an area where it could go either way. We are looking now at the DXY on the weekly time frame, and we see we had after this initial undecided week before, we have quite a strong bearish follow through week, making a new low outside the overall structure we were discussing a few weeks already. Going down to the 4-hour time frame, we can see that we made a new low and broke outside and closed outside. From a structural point of view, there's still an argument for a turnaround here with a bigger bull flag continuation with the 1, 2, 3. So the structure is basically finished, and now a turnaround breaking back in, followed by a bullish continuation. Then we know that this is taking over the higher time frame. On the other hand, when we are looking at the daily time frame again, we can see we are in a bearish momentum run and we made a new low. So there is also an argument for price tapping down into this area, because we had here the last bigger consolidation before the last leg up. So it would also make sense from a technical standpoint for the dollar to sell off a bit further before we then see some bigger reaction in this area. And we might get some clues on other dollar related pairs, and that's because we are just really on the structure low basically, and on the beginning of the next leg down. That's why we have such a dollar heavy watch list next week, because we can really, based on what the market is giving us early next week, in probably like Monday or Tuesday, will then define the rest of the week. So we do have a look now on Euro US dollar, and we can see here, let me clean that up shortly, on the daily time frame, that the structure is not yet finished. Here we have a potential expanding structure here, and we did not actually tap into the previous high here, and we also have a bigger consolidation here, which was then the last run for this kind of progressive price action here to the left. So it would make sense for price to go a bit further up. On the other hand, of course, we can see early next week a break of this high and then a break back in, and we will know then that we have to change our bias for a euro short. But as it stands right now, I'm looking more for, on the lower time frame, for a bullish continuation. I'm going now here to the 1 hour, and we can see we have some small liquidity point here and here. And if I get a deliberate bull flag continuation, I'm happy to take a long in this area. Easily manageable, just at least to this high here. But if we accumulate more volume in this area, it's unlikely for price to stop here. So we will at least finish the structure here, and that would be a very nice run. So this gives us a bit the clue that there is still quite a high potential for the DXY to sell a bit further. So Australian dollar, US dollar on the daily time frame, we can see here we have a similar picture. We are here not really tapping in a strong liquidity area, but we have a 1, 2, 3 expanding structure, and price is at the high. It actually tapped the high shortly and is now open for both direction. But if we see this volume accumulation here after this impulsive move up, then we can argue that we are, if we try to replicate this leg up here, it would make sense for price to reach into these areas here. So for a further sell-off in the DXY and a more weakening in the dollar in that regard. In here, there were some trades last week. I actually go down to the 1 hour shortly. I took a break even here as a long continuation, and then there was a very nice short after this small structure within structure. Into the CPI news. I could not get this trade. I decided to stay out before CPI, because that would potentially the widening of the spread could potentially close my account in that regard. So I did not want to take any risk. And yeah, that's I missed this trade. But we can see here, if you wanna have more details on this long, you can find all the details in the link in the description to my trading journal. So there's a more detailed breakdown. So moving on to next week, we can see here that we are, let's shortly go back to the 4 hour to get the picture again. We are in the expanding structure, and we are in the beginning of the next leg, right? So we do know that these expanding structures, they can they can serve as a continuation or as a reversal pattern. So, and based on what we discussed on the DXY, both would make sense in this area. So we are positioned for a nice long continuation, but we are also positioned for potential sells. So we will wait for the market to give us a clear clue. We have a liquidity area here, and if we get a nice reversal in this area, if it's really a momentum run, I don't think we will get a bigger 3-touch bull flag here, not after this volume accumulation here. So that's why I think it will more be a V-shaped recovery. And therefore I'm looking for a weighted time frame entry here. And on the other hand, if we see DXYs turning around, then we will see some impulsive move below this low again, and then followed by a bear flag continuation. Then we know the DXY is turning around and we can sell the Australian dollar. Very similar picture on New Zealand dollar, US dollar. However, going here to the daily, we have here nothing to the left yet, but we have an expanding structure which is not yet finished. We did tap into this previous high, so even from here price could potentially turn around and sell off. Technically that would make sense. However, with the positioning and what we discussed before, it also makes sense for price to finish this last leg up at least into this liquidity area here. And keep in mind we have a small gap here, so it would make sense for price to go up and then sell off again. So we might see some bigger reaction in this area. Going down to the 1 hour time frame here, I'm looking for a smaller continuation because we are already on top of this high here to the left. And if I get early Monday clean 1, 2, 3 continuation structure on the 1 hour time frame, then I'm happy to take a long in this area, easily manageable to the high of the structure here. If you expand that somewhere here, and then with the target going into this liquidity area up here. Then pound US dollar on the daily time frame, we do have this ascending wedge here with the 1, 2, 3 into this very significant liquidity point. We can see this liquidity point even here on the daily time frame. So there's definitely some volume up here, and we can see we ended the day still bullish but on a strong wick. So this could indicate the potential turnaround, but based on the positioning again, DXY, and what we see here going down to the 4 hour time frame, we can see that we have actually going to the 1 hour even easier. We have some liquidity areas here. We have a small one here, we have a more significant one here, and if I get a 1, 2, 3 bull flag continuation up here even into this area, I'm happy to still take a long. So if we get something like that into this level here, then I'm happy to take a long. And on the other hand, if the DXY is turning around and we see an impulsive move back below this area followed by a bear flag continuation, then we take a sign of the market and we'll change our bias to a short. US dollar Canadian on the daily time frame, we were discussing that for a while, and we finally broke out of this. I boxed it off this volume accumulation here with the flush, the washout actually above the high, and then the strong retrace here. And we were looking last week for a potential entry in this area. We knew it was higher risk because we were still within the overall structure here. We did not get a clean entry here, but then broke out towards the end of the week and are now starting to consolidate outside the structure. So I'm here looking for a smaller 1 hour continuation structure to enter a short continuation. I'm not looking for long or anything. Otherwise, if I don't get a clean structure, then there's better pairs on watch to focus. But if we get early next week a nice 1 hour structure, then I'm happy to continue US dollar Canadian dollar short. US dollar Swiss francs on the weekly time frame. Let's start on the weekly. We can see we are here. This is kind of undecided price action. So we are clearly in a consolidation phase. We still have here this more significant area of interest to the left. We left the gap. We did not close the gap. Instead, we started to consolidate earlier. We had a potential turnaround, but failed to break through. And then we get this choppy, more complex structure here. So on the bigger time frame, we also still have this gap here to the low. But if we are looking at just as kind of price nature, then we have this 1, 2, 3 in a bigger impulsive flag and are now starting to stall. We did stall in this area, so it could potentially be a bull flag continuation for the next bigger move to the upside. And when we go here to the 4-hour time frame, we can see we have an argument. There is an argument actually for a finished 1, 2, 3 structure here. We see some form of small turnaround, but this is Friday, last day of the week. So it's hard to say how this candle is made up. So definitely not something I would bet the trade on it. But if we get a follow through and then some form of bull flag continuation on at least the 1-hour time frame, then I'm happy to take a long here, because we ended it with a 1, 2, 3 into this 1, 2, 3 into a smaller liquidity point. So at the moment, the long here is still in place. On the other hand, if we see a proper breakthrough, maybe even below here, and then seeing some form of bear flag continuation, of course, we take a sign of the market and we know then this structure is a failed structure. Therefore, it would support a sell argument even more. But as it stands right now, this structure is not yet considered a failed structure and would still be a valid continuation structure for a long. Euro Australian dollar. On the weekly time frame, we were looking for that for a while again. We had this expanding structure here, then we had this 2 more bearish weeks, an undecided week then again, and we are now still in an area where it would make sense for a short continuation. We had some structures here. There was a sell here after this V shape. Then we have a gap here. We have quite a nice bearish run here. A V shape recovery in almost, I think it's like, let's shortly check. I guess it's roughly 50%. Okay, it's a bit more than 50% here. So quite a healthy retrace, and then a failed continuation to the upside, and then quite a strong turnaround here. So I'm looking now for a bullish continuation, but for a bearish continuation, but I'd like to see a very clear picture, at least on the 1-hour time frame. We have here on the 15-minute a small liquidity point. We have a structure here. We had some structure here. This is more like kind of a running channel. Then we have a small liquidity point here, and we are now starting to form something like that. This is just a wick. We can ignore that of news volatility, but then say we have one bottom here, second one, 1, 2, 3 into this area, and a nice turnaround on the 1 hour. I would consider enter a short trade here. Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar. On the daily time frame, we had a very strong bullish momentum run here, and then we failed to connect above this liquidity area here to the left, basically above here. We were discussing that for a long continuation last week already, or a week before, I guess. Yeah, it was not on watch last week, and now broke out and failed to connect. So instead it turned around with quite some bearish momentum, closed below, and I'm now looking for a bearish continuation again. This is not my absolute main watch, but it would make sense from the overall picture, because we had here a failed bullish structure. Instead we got here a small continuation at the end of the structure, a drop out, and are now looking for kind of a momentum run further to the downside. And on the 15-minute, we can see we have here a small liquidity point. Forget about the last week. Here is Friday evening week. That's a closing week, so this is not relevant. So we want to see price to tickle up a bit more, preferably higher than this one, but not tapping in here and then forming a second base. And if we get something like that, that would be very deliberate price action and a nice area to enter a short here. New Zealand dollar Canadian. on the daily time frame. This is a bit a tricky one. We discussed it many times, many weeks already, because it did actually respect structure fairly well. We still have a gap here to this previous low, but we turned around on the end, on the start of this bigger structure here, the 1, 2, 3. Then we had this one here with the override, and we now have a very clear liquidity point here, but we left the gap and started to sell off. However, when we go to the 4-hour time frame, we can see we had a 1, 2, 3 and still left the gap here. So let me clean that up a bit at least. So, and I'm now looking actually for a long continuation to close the gap here, and then potentially a more stronger reaction on this level here, a potential turnaround. So I'm looking now, and of course I can still see we have this area of interest here to the left, so price could tap into here and sell off. But if I get a deliberate continuation pattern here on the lower time frame, I'm going straight to the 15 minutes to see a bit more structure, and I get a 1, 2, 3 bullish continuation. I'm happy to take a long in this area, because that would give me enough room to manage the trade into these two highs here. And if it then breaks through with enough volume accumulation, then I'm in for a good trade in a good position. And Swiss francs, Japanese yen on the daily time frame, I'm still more leaning towards the overall yen strengthening theme. However, yeah, when we look at the daily, we can see that we have a change in momentum. We have quite a lot of bullish candles. Now we left the gap here, but yeah, we also left gaps here. We had not a proper V-shaped recovery. We left the gap here as well. So it's hard to say, and we still have this more significant area of interest here to the left, even for just a V-shaped recovery. And when I look at this structure, the structure is a bit off, because it's a bit too much consolidation after just this small leg to the upside. However, I'm going down to the 1 hour. It looks fairly clean right now. So if I get a proper 1 hour structure and a reversal here, maybe a 4 hour reversal candle here, I'm happy to take a long continuation, because it just makes sense from a technical point of view to at least tap into this region here before we see a bigger reaction. And we also have this small liquidity point here to the left, which I think it's still within the 50% range. So more or less, yeah, it's still easily within the 50% range, even when you take the low. So it would still make sense for a long continuation. If I see, on the other hand, then a very strong break, impulsive break to the low, to the downside, followed by a bear flag continuation, of course, we will change our bias. But right now, I'm leaning a bit more towards a long play for Swiss francs, Japanese yen. So yeah, that's it. That's my watch list for the week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.